interactions.
Got it. Thank you, Prabhu, and thank you everybody for joining today. It's nice to see some smiling faces early this morning. Dr. Henry, Adi Bruce Prabhu, Mr. Jeff. Thank you, everybody. Nanda Bihari, Dima Prabhu. So nice to see everybody. Start with a little Jai Radha Madhava, like old times, and go from there. Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Jashodanandana Braja Janadana Jashodanandana Jashodanandana Braja Janadana Jashodanandana Janadira Janadira Ira Manachari Tira Manachari Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Om Adhyanatimandasya Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachayane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pastata Deshatayane. Vanchakopatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay, here we go. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantharaj, the king of all books, I think. And starting with text 9, and then we'll go all the way through to 13. Very interesting section. It's talking about the so-called lusty desires, or I guess you could even say, outrightly lusty desires in a way. It's transcendental, of course, but of Trivakra, who Krishna just transformed into a beautiful young maiden, I believe. And it's interesting. I'm reading the first canto, second chapter right now, Divinity and Divine Service. And Prabhupada is in the purports explaining why Srimad Bhagavatam is the best book of all time, basically. And the reasoning he gives is because this is the only book that you'll see is sung and appreciated by the Paramahamsas, by people who are completely free from any desire for anything within the material world and just have this taste for loving Krishna, or better to say that they have no desire for anything in the material world. And then it's so funny though that here we are in the 42nd chapter of the Summum Bonum of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, when we're reading about the lusty desires of Trivakra for Krishna. So make it make sense, right? How could it be? And so again, it comes back to the fact that what we're about to read about here in these verses, they're all transcendental emotions. They're nothing like what we experience in the material world, in the sense that they are motivated by a love for Krishna. They're not motivated by a desire. That is there also the desire for Trivakra's own enjoyment, you could say, but the root of these desires is the desire to please Krishna, whereas the root of our desires in the material world is to please ourselves. And so in that sense, they're categorically different. They're extremely different, even though they may appear somewhat similar. And so in any case, there's a little preface. Can you hear me, Adi Purush Prabhu? Yes, okay, good. Okay, so here we go. Narayanam namaskritya naram taiva narottamam devam sarasatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. So I'll just run through 9 through 12, and then on 13, then we could do call and response. Tato rupa gunaudarya sampana praha keshavam uttariyantamarksha smayanti jata hitchaya. Now endowed with beauty, character, and generosity, Trivakra began to feel lusty desires for Lord Keshava. Taking hold of the end of his upper cloth, she smiled and addressed him as follows. Ihi vira griham yama natvam tyaktam ihotsahe tayon matita chittaya prasida purusharshabha. Trivakra said, "Come, O hero, let us go to my house. I cannot bear to leave you here, O best of males. Please take pity on me, since you have agitated my mind." Purusha Rishabha, best of males. Purport: Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti supplies the following conversation. Krishna, is it for the purpose of dining that you're inviting me to your house? Trivakra, I simply can't leave you here. Krishna, but people here on the king's road will misconstrue what you're saying and laugh. Therefore, please don't speak like this. Trivakra, I cannot help being agitated. You made the mistake of touching me. It's not my fault. Evam striya yachyamana Krishna ramasya pashyataha mukam vikshanu gopanam prahasamstam uvachaha. Thus entreated by the woman, Lord Krishna first glanced at the face of Balaram, who was watching the incident, and then at the faces of the cowherd boys. Then with a laugh, Krishna replied to her as follows. My Guru Maharaj often compares this whole sequence of events as Krishna is entering Mathura with like your common movies like Rebel Without a Cause. That's an older one, I guess. Like James Dean-esque stuff, where this kind of good-looking, rebellious young guy walks into a town and just starts like running stuff. He just starts like being the boss automatically, even though he's so young and doesn't know anybody. Apparently he's like the new guy in town, and so you can see where they got that from. It is an eternal situation, an eternal pastime, and but Krishna is the originator, and as we see here, Krishna is, what was that word we just upon, Purusha Rishabha, the best of males. So we see the perfected version here, because last I checked, James Dean doesn't look as good as he used to. No offense to him, but Krishna looks even better than he did at this time. So Krishna is being cool, and then we see Eshyami te graham subru pumsam adi vikarshanam sadhitarto grahanam na pantanam tvam parayanam. Lord Krishna said, "O lady with beautiful eyebrows, as soon as I fulfill my purpose, I will certainly visit your home, your house, where men can relieve their anxiety. Indeed, you are the best refuge for us homeless travelers." Purport: by the word agranam, Sri Krishna indicated not only that he had no fixed residence, but also that he was not yet married. And we'll do a call and response now. I guess I'll just read it line for line, and then you guys behind closed mics can repeat each line after I say it. So we'll go slow. Visrijya madhya vanyatam Rajan marge vanikpatai nanopayana tambula sragandai sagrajorchita Visrijya, leaving, madhya, sweet, vanya, with words, tam, her, vrajan, walking, marge, along the road, vanikpatai, by the merchants, nana, with various, upayana, respectful offerings, tambula, betel nut, srak, garlands, gandai, and fragrant substances, sa, together with, agraja, his elder brother, archita, worshipped. Translation: leaving her with these sweet words, Lord Krishna walked further down the road. The merchants along the way worshipped him and his elder brother by presenting them with various respectful offerings, including pan, garlands, and fragrant substances. Let me just make sure I could see everybody. Cool. So, yeah, interesting series of verses. As I mentioned earlier, it's just interesting the fact that we're hearing about these lusty desires in what's basically the spiritual world. Krishna is surrounded by devotees who are his eternal associates, and as such, there's not a tinge of material desire in their hearts, especially in those who are relating with him in this way, in this kind of loving exchange. And I just think it's cool the way Krishna like enters places. Like he just kind of, walks in there like he owns the place, because of course he does. and he just starts like making trouble, breaking bows and chopping people's heads off who don't give him clothes, and like putting his fingers. I just thought it was cool the way he. I always thought it was cool the way he transformed this woman into a beautiful girl that she was like this hunchback, and was like leaning at like basically like a 90-degree angle you could picture, and then Krishna just like puts his fingers under her chin, just like lifts her up, and simultaneously turns her into this beautiful girl. And so he starts doing stuff that like for if like regular human beings started doing them, they would get some praise as well, but it would never be like a fully complete form of beauty. I think that there's always that sense that one, that this person isn't actually qualified to be receiving the praise that they're being received, or to be as cool as they're being perceived, and two, that it won't last. That like even the coolest people of all time, you could think of different people in your lives, previous rock stars or models or movie stars or whoever it might be. In time, they're uh, becoming less cool, less beautiful, less able. Oftentimes, they become less talented. If you look at, I like to use the example of Al Pacino. Like he's like really good in Godfather and Godfather Part Two. Like his later stuff, I just didn't wasn't into. But you see that across the board, that people lose their edge as they age a lot of the time, unless you're a devotee, of course, because then you're connected to something eternal, something that's giving you more and more life and more um, purpose and meaning. But for the rest of the world, for those who are disconnected from Krishna, they are basically flowers disconnected from the root. And no matter how beautiful they may be, at one point, everybody is on this kind of highway towards dissolution and degradation, or the boulevard of broken dreams, as I've heard it put in a different way. But it's something we can definitely perceive, that even the coolest of the cool eventually come back down to earth and end up disappointing us. So it's worth noting here that we are naturally attracted to such people, to people who are super cool or super attractive, um, or extremely talented, whatever it might be. But we're always bound to be let down by them in the long run, because they're not Krishna, and they're not connected to Krishna. But for those who are connected to Krishna, then we needn't be afraid that we'll eventually lose um, our inspiration in dealing with them. And that's something that we can also regularly perceive in people around us in the devoted community, who have taken up Krishna consciousness very seriously and developed their connection with Krishna, developed their intimacy with Krishna, and developed their relationship with him to such a point that instead of degrading over time and becoming less and less cool and less able, they actually get more and more cool and more able to inspire us. So it's just one of those like one of many interesting kind of relationships that we see in the material world, where for those who are disconnected from Krishna, they get gradually um, less and less attractive, less and less cool, less and less able to do stuff. Whereas those who are connected to Krishna, they develop this kind of special attraction about them, this kind of special beauty about them. Uh, they develop finer and finer intelligence. We see as well that that's like a thing that I've viscerally realized, that for people who are older and past, like you could say 60s, 70s, and who aren't connected to Krishna, they kind of gradually get duller and duller to the point where it's like hard to even hold a conversation with a lot of them. And you could see that they've just kind of been bogged down into like this kind of lull. Not completely across the board. There are others maybe it doesn't impact as much, but in general, that's what I've seen. That people past a certain age, they get um, of the juice being taken out of life for them as they've aged. They kind of become more and more um, bogged down by the material energy. But for those who are devotees, it's very much the opposite, where we see devotees up into their late 60s, 70s, even 80s that are very lucid, that are giving extremely cutting philosophical discourses that can really hear you out, can offer really sound advice on your life. And because they're just so present still with everybody here, and they haven't kind of numbed themselves through alcohol or TV or whatever it might be as a means of coping with the fact that they're aging and gradually marching towards oblivion as they see it. Devotees always have something to look forward to. And so this connection with Krishna, it kind of hoists one up gradually as one goes through life, and one gets more and more inspiration, more and more happiness, and more hope, more and more to look forward to as they progress towards leaving their body. But it's quite the opposite for someone who doesn't have a conception of Krishna or even the afterlife in general, in which they realize that their death is imminent and that gradually they are marching towards something horrible as they see it. So Krishna is the best. We can fully rely on him, not only for being like the coolest person of all time and for fully coming through on all these different aspects of cool that he's presenting here in this section of the Bhagavatam, but also because through our connection with him, we can also gradually become more refined in our intelligence, in our presentation of ourselves, in our presentation of Krishna consciousness, and especially in our inspiration through life. That's a big thing you see with older people is they lose that inspiration, they lose that kind of juice of life, and so they have to numb themselves with television or alcohol or whatever it might be. But by becoming connected with Krishna, then we gradually develop more and more utsahan, more and more enthusiasm as we get closer and closer towards him, all the way up to the point of when we actually leave our bodies and join him in his eternal pastimes. So I think it's worth noting also that there, because of the fact that we're attracted towards cool, it's a big goal that most people have in their lives, especially young people, to become cool. And that means different things for different people, but generally, you could say the framework is generally consisting of having more money than average, having a bigger house or nicer living space than average, having a nicer car than like what the average is, having a better looking spouse than what the average would be considered, and just being overall kind of like in an upper echelon of material sense gratification, basically. But it's so depressing, actually, that for for the people who get there, for people who get to that higher level, and who have based their lives off of that, and then they often come to realize that it's not enough, that it's not satisfying, that there's some kind of fleeting um, pleasure or kind of like sensation would probably be a better word that they get from attaining those things, but ultimately it's not satisfying. It's just a kind of like a fleeting thing. Whereas by deriving our happiness from service and from connection to Krishna, then we're truly satisfied and ever increasingly satisfied. It's a big contrast from, say, getting a bunch of money or getting a nice car or something. Like I remember, I used to like be a big poker player in high school. I used to really I got into poker a lot, and I often would reflect on the fact that whenever I like won a big amount of money, then it would always be this like instantaneous moment of like gratification, and then it was immediately followed by this like dread and this like worry of potentially losing the chips, because with poker, especially in a tournament, it's all about having like maintaining your chips all the way to the point of finishing the thing. And so there's always, in the material world, we see that no matter how much we get, whatever gratification that comes from that initial kind of receiving of something, it's always immediately followed by this sense of like dread and fear of losing it. Whereas in the spiritual realm, when we're connected to Krishna, then um, we are constantly and ever increasingly being enriched um, through connection with Him. And we see our love for Him is growing more and more. And not only that, but we're also taken care of materially. For the materialist, being on the outs materially is often a source of great fear and anxiety. But for people who are genuinely spiritual and developing their connection with Krishna, they actually come to enjoy that status of uncertainty and material um, difficulty. I remember during COVID, like right when it was becoming like a real thing, that like, okay, there's like an actual pandemic and people are dying, and like this is going to be a big problem. Adi Purush Prabhu called me, and he was like, I forget exactly what he said, but he was like, he was basically like, this is it. This is what we live for. This is what we've been waiting for. Like this to happen in the material world, because like this is our chance. Like this is such a wonderful opportunity to serve Krishna, because people are going to be so scared and going through so much suffering that they're going to finally really feel the need for something higher than just the regular mundane material world and all of its devices. Um, and also on our part, I mean, he was saying that being somebody that runs a guest program, where it's like some ridiculous amount each month that he has to pay, rent for, and it's dependent on people traveling, basically people coming to New York City for events or visit relatives or whatever it might be. And so it's like I doubt any industry was as impacted as that particular industry in terms of like travel and leisurely um, visitations of different places. But still, he was ecstatic and knew that Krishna would come through, that Krishna would catch us before we fell, just like he did with Prahlad Maharaj. And so I guess the thesis of what I'm trying to say is that there's this big push in the material world towards material comforts and material opulences. And people often think that that's what'll make them happy. But in reality, it is the struggle for pleasing Krishna that actually pleases the soul and gives us happiness. And there's one Leonard Cohen quote that I often think of in his song Hallelujah, where he says that love is not a victory march, it's a cold and broken hallelujah. And so that's something that we can meditate on as well, that as devotees of Krishna and as people who are serious about developing love for Krishna, uh, we shouldn't expect too much in terms of material opulence or material sense gratification. Of course, some will be there enough that we need to get by, but we should try and learn to relish the difficulties, try and learn to relish the austerities, and use those times and those situations as vehicles for our love to come through and be delivered to Krishna. And it's probably too many words, but for a thesis. But in any case, learn we should, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Well, I think it's said best in our sacred text that austerity is the wealth of the brahmanas. And what is that wealth? It's not material money, or even subtle sense gratification, but it's love for Krishna. That austerity is a means by which we can develop our love for Krishna and express it to him. Tatte nukampam susamikshamano buddhyana ivatmakritam vipakam pridvagvapurbir vididan namaste jiveta yomukti pade sadayabak. The one who earnestly awaits for Krishna to bestow his causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, is certainly eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. And in the purport, Hridayananda Das Goswami Maharaj and I believe Gopi Pranandan and Prabhu weave together a masterful sequence of philosophical points, and the most poignant of them all being that as long as we're in the material world and haven't developed bhava bhakti, then there will be vestiges of the enjoying spirit within our heart. And so oftentimes Krishna will put us in situations in which we can be purified of those tendencies through making the choice to not complain or say, oh, woe is me, when difficulties arise, but to offer our respectful obeisances to Krishna and thank him for the opportunity to take further shelter of him. And so as opposed to trying to be some cool rock star like everybody, like many people are trying to be in the material world, better to be some humble devotee who may or may not have a lot of money, but is always looking for opportunities in which they can express their love for Krishna, especially in the difficult times. So we'll stop there and see if there are any questions or comments.
Wonderful class, Anupam Prabhu. Just a little takeaway. I really appreciated how you said that as devotees, we're not just tolerating pain and suffering. That's a channel for our love for Krishna to come through. It's not just not just tolerating. It's all in relation to Krishna. I really appreciate that you said it like that. Thank you. Jamuna Jaya, followed by Adi Purusha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Anupam. Thank you for a wonderful class. I was just thinking when you were starting to talk about people as they age, and you're saying lose their spark, and I'm like, and I really thought my mom, but because my mom well, Lord Jesus is her guy, and I see it in her, and I am always so grateful for the role model that my mother has set. She is doing aging right. She's spent these last years
Is it just me, or you can hear that?
Everything's breaking up there.
Jamuna Jaya, you can't be heard.
She's all about being of service of people and praying and worshiping. So
Everything's echoing.
it's such a good point, because though she knows this is the end, it's coming fast upon her. She's not lost her joie de vivre, because it's all about her. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Mike. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
I think I got the gist of it, though. You're saying how your mom is retained her spark and is facing, her later years and, her eventual departure with lots of grace and enthusiasm because she has so much faith and love for Jesus Christ. That's a really nice point. It's nice to have testimony like that. Bhima Prabhu.
We have Bruce and Adi. Let's not forget about them.
Go to Haribol Prabhu. Go to Adi and Bruce.
Okay. Hari Prabhu.
We agree with Nanda Bihari, reflecting how you were explaining. We don't just tolerate these difficulties, but we're grateful for them, because Krishna knows He's helping us to learn and grow. And we definitely, on the spiritual path, there will be austerity. And Prabhupada told us, austerity is the wealth of the Brahmins. The difficult things that we have are actually helping us. You mentioned the Dharma Projita Kaitava, that the Bhagavatam is different because it kicks out cheating religion. We know that material life is a dead end, but the danger for devotees is that we drift into religiosity, rituals, ceremonies, and things that are geared for our own advancement and benefit and comfort and safety. And on the other hand, sometimes people, I just heard recently somebody was saying that they're trying to help me become a better devotee, and they were saying, Adi speaks about the Bible. This is Bhagavatam class, but we're not talking about Christianity or religion or Hinduism or whatever. We're talking about the simple truth that the austerity, the sacrifice is appropriate. You were quoting Tapo Divyam Putraka, Lord Rishabdev saying to his sons, in the human form of life, it's appropriate to voluntarily accept difficulty, austerity in the service of the Lord to purify our existence. And this is I was reading one thing and from the Bible, if you'll bear with the fact that this is actually appropriate in anyone's life, no matter what expression of faith is. In the Bible, it says that Jesus, who Prabhupada said is our guru, he said, take up your cross and follow me. And it says that everybody has a cross to bear. In everyone's life, there's going to be some challenge, some difficulty. And that there's this cartoon of these different people carrying a cross, going on a journey. And then one guy thinks, well, let me just cut my cross short, because it's so heavy. So he cuts off a big chunk of the cross and just has a little cross. Everybody else is carrying a big one. But then they get to a chasm, and everybody puts their cross across the open hole, and they go use their cross to walk across it, but his is too short. He can't get across. A devotee from India sent me that cartoon. So we do have difficulty, and Martin Luther King said, I'm beginning to understand that the cross is something that you bear and then you die on it. That, we want to give ourselves completely to this, and to giving every drop. Just like Srila Prabhupada. He accepted the austerity of traveling and preaching, and he did it right up to his last breath. We're meant to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. And so we don't cringe from the difficulties, even though they're difficult to tolerate, but we go on in our service, we thank Krishna for them, we think, how can I serve you under this circumstance, Lord? Maybe I'm talking too much, but anyway, you very nicely explained all this. We're just reflecting. Tapo Divyam Putraka.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adi. Thank you, Adi, for it's a great point. I think it speaks to also why Prabhupada didn't want his disciples going to Radhakund and just sitting down and chanting for the rest of their lives. That I think that cross, that thing that we all have to bear, that mission we choose to take up, and the thing we choose to be like a voluntary source of anxiety, is meant to help us in our japa. It's meant to help us in our chanting, in our devotional service, because otherwise it's like we understand we're supposed to cry to Krishna, but if everything's okay, then how can we develop that urge? You know, I mean, unless we're super advanced from the last life and we actually have this, you know, deep longing for love of God, then perhaps, you know, we can go to Radhakund. But for those who, for most of us who need something extra to help motivate us to take shelter of Krishna and to beg for his mercy and to beg for his love and to beg for love for him, those our service is what will do that for us. We need some solid service that we can carry on our back, that'll push us forward, that'll keep us from floating up into some ethereal sky of sense gratification, and that we can eventually lie down and die on, like Adi Purush was saying. That we can bring to Krishna at the end of our lives and say, "This is what I've carried for you." Very important. Bruce, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, good morning. Really beautiful invocation prayers. I so felt your sincerity this morning. So thank you for this. Speaking of coolest of the cool, I used to race bicycles, and there was a man named Mark Cavendish, and he was the current sort of unbeatable 34 Tour de France wins. And while I was racing, I idolized this man. I was like, if I could just have the smallest of nuggets of this man's talent, then I would be cool, or could be somebody in this realm of, you know, competitive bicycle racing. And even he would have moments where he would come on the TV and express just the nastiest of behaviors. And I would excuse it with just, yeah, but he's Mark Cavendish. He wins races. And the point that I just watched this documentary on his life a couple of days ago is, as he started getting a little older, a little less prolific in his wins, he went into a heavy, heavy depression, left his family, contemplated suicide, and his identity was winning bicycle races. And I was thinking to myself, I just watched this 2 days ago, so I'm realizing there are less and less coincidences, and it's Krishna providing you with what you need to hear. So thank you for this class, because I've been reflecting on this. His identity had left him. Because he had no real identity. It was a man on a bicycle winning races. And I recently was sent the other day, Prabhupada reflecting on his experience from instruction from his guru, and he says that he simply, capital, simply is a servant to Krishna. Now here's Prabhupada speaking of how simple he is and what he's done. And have heard in his memoirs, AC, always cool, Prabhupada. So I just thank you for connecting all these points with my meditation this week. And I'm very happy to the idol or the man that I idolize now than back then. So Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, again, nice to hear those testimonies and yeah, we hear in Bhagavad Gita that we should study nescience and transcendence side by side. And some people think that means that we should, like, you know, go into the material world and like enjoy as much as possible and then see that it's not satisfying. And that could be one way to interpret it. But in other ways, like you're saying, Bruce and Jamuna Jai, that we could actually see these truths playing out around us, and then can deduct from that the opposite, the other side, must also be true. Then, if the material world is being described properly, then the spiritual world is also being described properly. We could put our faith in that, develop love for that. I have to start getting ready for work, but I will go to my phone and hear from Bhima Prabhu, and if anybody else has anything.
Haribol, can I be heard?
Yes.
Can I be heard? Yes.
Yes, but it's darshan
there you
time.
go. That's what I have to say. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu. Wonderful darshan. Anupam, if you're still here, wonderful class. Bhima Prabhu, you have your comment? This is Shrimad Bible class.
I just wanted to say Anupam should be named Anukam. He's very calm when he speaks. He's very soothing. As all our speakers have this uncanny ability to instill a confidence that everything's going to be all right. I also wanted to say that what Bruce said, actually I had something more to say, but this is the end of class. But I did want to say that there's only so much I can take away from every class, being of short memory and always conflicted. But AC, meaning always cool. I think that's great. AC Bhaktivedanta. Obviously, if you're AC Avoicharan without fear, then you're always cool. So those two acronyms go together. And I won't soon forget that. If we wish to be always cool in this world, Anukam, for the first to be calm, then we should remember Srila Prabhupada as being fearless and always keep that sharp edge of courage that Krishna is going to carry what we lack, carry what we have and provide what we lack. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Wonderful takeaways. Yeah, always cool. Krishna carried us Prabhupada. How wonderful that is. Okay. So with this, we'd like to thank you for participating in this community. Wish you a wonderful, fulfilling Friday. Give it to Krishna. And come back tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.